What's good, my inquisitive and sometimes delightful anatomy heads? This is part 3 of my anatomy series, and we're going to start to get into function in this episode. Before we went over the different planes of motion, key terms to understanding anatomy, now we're going to start putting those things together with regards to motion. And this is imperative if we're going to talk about muscle function, origins, insertions, all that good stuff. So without further ado, we're jumping into it right now. First thing we're going to talk about is flexion and extension. I know you guys hear that term a lot or have heard it a lot. So what does that really mean? Let's start with flexion. So flexion is the decreasing of a joint angle, right? If you look, it's an acute angle. Let's travel back to math class, whether it gives you non-flashbacks or not. Sorry about that, right? Acute, flex, when you want to be more obtuse, you're moving into extension, or when you're trying to straighten a joint, right? Or just straighten anything, extension. Another easy way, this damn plane. There's so many planes around here, we're gonna give it a second. All right, so the plane is gone. What was I saying? Flexion, extension. Most of the flexors are on the front of your body, right? Easy way to remember. Extensors, back of the body, except for the knees, because they're backwards elbows and they're weird. I don't make the rules, right? But think about how weird it would be if it was the other way around and we had backwards knees. You would run really weird, right? But get that image out of your head. It's a little disturbing. I think there was a freaking show on Adult Swim like that. I'm gonna put it around here if I can find it. Anywho, right? Flexors are on the front, extensors are on the back besides the knees because they're backwards elbows. If you ever forget, let's travel back to when you were 8 months old. You were a little C-shape in your mama's belly. We're gonna go just like this. Boom, and what do you notice? Every joint is in flexion. The head, or neck, rather. The wrist, elbow, forearms, the whole upper extremity, right? Your spine is flexed forward, your hips, your knees, and your ankles. The opposite is true. When you stand up, nice and straight, you extend everything. Cool to notice. And also, if you notice, all of that motion, flexion, extension, it only occurs in the sagittal plane. Remember, sagittal plane, only forwards and backwards movement. So now let's talk about movement in that frontal plane, which if you remember is lateral movement, or movement to and away from the midline. So we have two terms, abduction and adduction. I'm gonna show you what abduction is. Boom, away from this wonderful midline we got. Away from that midline. Adduction. Damn planes, man. Jesus Christ. Adduction is movement to the midline, right? To the midline, or even across. That's adduction. Now let's think about the terms. Abduction, you get beamed up into the sky, abducted by aliens. The word abducted, taken away. Adduct, to add, bring together. So you're bringing together. This leg is out here, bringing it together. That's strictly movement in the frontal plane. Now let's talk about movement in that horizontal plane. Remember, horizontal divides the body from a top and a bottom, and it's strictly rotation. So what does that really look like? Let's look at the shoulder. The shoulder and hips pretty much are the same thing, but there's a small difference. So let's look at the head of the shoulder, or the head of the humerus rather. So when that head rotates to the midline, right? You can see rotates to the midline, internal rotation or medial rotation, but no one says medial rotation really. Opposite is true. When this head moves away, external rotation of the shoulder or lateral rotation of the shoulder. Now let's look at the hip because it's almost the same, but there's something that trips people up a little bit. Okay, so remember, head of the femur, it's all about that movement. So head of the femur moves out when I twist my leg this way, external rotation. Let's take a step back, right? Internal rotation, boom, right? Movement to the midline, because all you gotta do is look at the relative position of the femur bone, right? But here's where people get tripped up. When the knee is bent, they reverse the two. So this is what I mean, right? So we're gonna bend that knee, but the foot moves this way, you immediately think, oh, internal rotation, right? The foot's moving in. But remember, it's the relative position of the femur bone. The femur bone is still moving out. So internal rotation would look like this. See? Femur moves in even though the foot is moving out. So let's look at rotation across different parts of the body. Let's look at the radial ulna joint. It's pretty much just the forearm connection between the radius and the ulna. So pronation, supination. When you tell someone to put a ring on it, supinating. You're trying to curve a weirdo, you pronate. Tell them stop, right? Remember that. That's dope, that's clever. You know, I did that one myself. And we also have rotation of the spine, rotation of the neck, all those movements. But we also have something called tibial rotation, right? It only occurs when the knee has a little bit of bend in it. If the knee is straight, right, all that happens is a rotation of the hip. And you know what, let's address this elephant in this room right now. I know y'all see this wire, mind your business, don't worry about it. I'm bringing you quality content on a budget. Okay, cool, excellent. So, tibial rotation, right? The tibia is gonna rotate to the inside when the knee is bent, right? The foot is also gonna move as well. External tibial rotation, boom, we got that right there. So now we have a movement that is a bit different. It's called horizontal abduction and horizontal adduction. Okay, let's think about the name. Abduction, away from midline, but it's moving vertically. So let's do it horizontally. Oh, awesome, that's so easy, right? Cool. So horizontal abduction is this, even here, even here. It occurs when you got a little bit of flexion or a lot of bit of flexion and you're moving away from the midline. The opposite is true. Horizontal adduction, right? You want to clap real hard or kill a fly? Boom, I would do it, but this will mess with the mic, right? Boom, horizontal adduction, whether it occurs here, whether it occurs here, or whether it occurs here, right? Important to know, that's pretty much the major function of the chest, right? Horizontal abduction, rear delts, shoulder blades, all that good stuff, right? But we'll get into that in the next video or in a future video. And now I have one last thing that I want to address, and that is lateral flexion of the spine. And what does that mean? Well, with everything I've shown you guys and told you guys, we could piece together lateral, away from midline or to the side, right? Flexion is when that joint angle decreases. Two and two together. Lateral flexion of the spine, right? Spine has to move away from the midline, but this joint angle is decreasing, right? So it can occur at the neck as well, like that. Thoracic and lumbar, lateral flexion of the lumbar. Those are all really important concepts to understand. But that's pretty much it, guys. These are all the motions I think are really important to learn before we move on to muscle function and just a deeper dive into anatomy. I know what you're thinking, I didn't go over really the wrist or the fingers or the ankles or toes, all that good stuff. I'm gonna save that for a later video. Even the shoulder blades, they have more functions, like rotating upward, protracting, retracting. But again, we're gonna learn about that in a future video. I think this is enough for today. So yeah, guys, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can keep bringing you juicy anatomy content. And keep learning anatomy, understand your bodies, and mind your business. Peace.